In the 21st century, the best anti-poverty program around is a world-class education.
My name is Dr. Charles H.F. Davis III, co-director of the Penn Center for the Study of Race and Equity in Education. I'm passionate about teaching and learning, but I also recognize the educational injustices facing Black youth in America. So I'm on a journey to connect with students, parents, community organizers, and other educators who are creating innovative ways of fixing the system. This often begins by building with others and engaging in critical conversations. There is so much we can learn from one another, and anything worth building requires working together from a position of what author Kiese Lehman describes as good love, healthy choices, and an opportunity for second chances.
The title of the program is Saving Tomorrow Today, From Cradle to Career. We are going to focus this conversation around education.
We always wanted to see the first Black president. We got that. Now we have to change the trajectory of our communities, and I think through K-12 is one of the key areas that we need to concentrate our time.
In the beginning of every child, education is the foundation. If we miss that, we miss everything for that child.
You have a responsibility to leave places better than you found them. Now, you can't do that if you haven't cultivated your mind. You can't do that if you haven't nurtured your spirit. You can't do that if you haven't taken your talents and developed them.
We tend to look at people by what they can't do. This kid's an at-risk youth. This kid's a struggling reader. This kid is illiterate. The same kid that's a struggling reader might be at home writing rap songs in his notebook. The same kid that's considered innumerate, can't do math, is in her parents' bodega giving out change without even using a register. So there are these ways in which the kids have a talent and a set of skills that school can't recognize yet. So for example, when I did hip-hop-based education in Philadelphia, when I started the Hip Hop Lit Project, suddenly the same kids that were getting D's in English and D's in language arts, the same kids that were considered to be so bad at school that they tried to get them out of the day school program so that they wouldn't mess up the standardized test scores, I took them all in. And suddenly the same kids that couldn't recognize tone and mood in a piece of literature could pick up Biggie or Nas and see those very same things. And then we gave them tests. We gave them all the same stuff that they kids got. And suddenly their scores went up so high, the principal called me back and said, hey, can you give me those hip hop kids? I need them to help us get our day scores up. But the model right now is so rigid, it's so one size fits all, that if a kid doesn't fit this one way of doing school, we throw the kid away.
In the K-12 system, we have to develop a holistic, what I call ecosystem. Money is not attached to it. What's attached to it is dedication, love, and more importantly, involvement. You have to have the right level of representation in the classroom to help this ecosystem grow. Currently, even still today, 80% of our teachers are white.
So we have these studies that show that white teachers often misinterpret Black students' behavior and see them as 4.5 years older than their chronological age. I have a colleague whose nephew was in trouble for aggressively hugging all of his classmates, too much aggressive hugging. And when their behaviors are over-sexualized or seen as violent, they are often punished in these extraordinary ways. The expulsion statistics for kindergarten are higher than for any other grade. Now that's the beginning of the school-to-prison pipeline.
The insights Ali presented around the perceptions of Black students and the potentially devastating effects on their lives were astounding. For an even deeper understanding, I visited another friend and colleague, Dr. Sean Harper. What were some of the specific disparities that you found in your study?
We found that nationally, 1.2 million Black children were suspended from K-12 public schools in a single academic school year, putting them on the school-to-prison pipeline. Wow. We have to be far more deliberate about disrupting single-sided, hopeless narratives about who Black people are. Those narratives are incredibly racist, and they're just not helpful. Think about a population of people about whom we only hear bad news. Well, then it doesn't surprise me that the nation comes to expect nothing but badness from us. So when that occurs, the consequences are numerous. One of them is that Black children don't see enough positive representations of themselves.
We often tell students that achievement is possible through hard work. But what is the value of hard work for Black students when they are perceived as troublemakers by their teachers and treated as criminals in their schools?
Schools are increasingly looking and feeling and operating like prisons.
You guys walked through the school building this morning. I mean, there's more security in the average school building in New York City than it is than to go through TSA.
8 officers downstairs.
Right, I mean, and it's not a bad school, and it's not bad kids. It's a perception of the institution about the potential of the young people to be violent. And so if you have a perception of the kids as being inherently violent when they walk into a space of learning, then it means that the first thing that they lead with is your view of them as violent, which means then that you are creating a context that invokes violence.
Right.
So that when kids enact violent acts, it's actually a response to the violent structures of the institution.
I wonder about the ways communities can hold the system accountable. So my next visit was to the Power U Center for Social Change, where I met with Ruth, Kiara, and Thomas, who are reimagining discipline in schools.
Well, we have to start talking about a world where cops are not in our schools. If the police don't belong in the schools, then what is something that could be there? For us as a restorative justice practitioner, for everybody to be trained on a whole school approach to be able to say, you know what, we are fighting for our people, our land, and our community.
As a mother, we try our best for them because I believe parents do not have anything to give a child more than the education.
I could only imagine the possibilities for your sons and for the sons and daughters of so many others if education can be a place in which they can grow, which they can thrive. What does the future look like?
Black and Latino youth can stay in school and learn. They would be the next futures doctors and lawyers of the tomorrow.
The solutions are out there, and the future for Black children greatly depends on what we do in our classrooms today.
Certain things work.
So what are some of those things?
Early childhood education, universal pre-K. They work.
All right, let's see who's ready. This word is going to be nix.
We've seen a really big difference from scholars who have attended pre-K and those who haven't.
But in order to provide a really holistic education that prepares these kids for success, that keeps them engaged in school, you have to be able to provide a broad set of opportunities.
It took a lot of building relationships to get our families fully on board, and here we are 2 years later with an amazing school culture.
Ooh, this is a different word. This word is afraid. What's the word?
Schools are the place where you learn how to be a citizen. Schools are a microcosm and an extension of society. School produces society and society produces school. Well, what kind of society do we produce if punishment is all we do?
So the first person I would like to share is someone who worked super hard on this.
We set high expectations. I have to make sure that I'm on time. I have to make sure that I listen to my teacher and I follow directions and I hold myself accountable. So because this is something that we drill and we speak about every day, it's become a part of their expectations. And because of that, we've never suspended a kindergartner, never suspended any scholar in early childhood. We do a lot more interventions where we meet with scholars, we do peer mediation, we speak to them because I want my scholars in class. I don't want them out of class.
The research is very clear on this. One of those things that we saw across the 40 schools is that they had committed themselves to restorative justice practices as opposed to zero tolerance approaches to school discipline. They also worked in partnership with students to create cultures of high expectation and high achievement. Teachers also had deeply meaningful relationships with students. They cared about them, they believed in them, they were invested in their success, and students felt that.
Sean made some great points. Our emotional investment in children is an important first step to meeting kids where they are. But I wonder, what are the tangible resources teachers are using to better engage students and to facilitate learning?
We use technology in literacy and in math. For example, if they need more help with letter recognition, sound recognition, and this program will then spit out different activities for them to do to help strengthen those areas that they're a little weak in, that they need to be stronger in.
When a student sits in a class for math 1 hour a day, 5 hours a week, there's a lot more to math than just 5 hours a week to really build out that competency. So the question is, the delivery mechanism, whether it be on smartphones, through content that engages a student, can happen any time of the day.
The children who are entering college now, they don't know a world without the internet. This is a group of young people for whom their primary reading won't be left to right, but it'll be up and down. We need to use digital technologies to engage families Why aren't we live streaming some of these events? Why aren't we using Skype for parent-teacher meetings? Why aren't we FaceTiming for stuff? We still putting notes in kids' book bags to tell them to tell their parents stuff.
Right.
We need to develop a way of thinking and accessing knowledge that is linked to the new ways that people engage tools like technology. We teach to the test, and because testing is good for business and having good test scores is great for business, and music ain't on the test, and art ain't on the test, what happens is music, art, social studies, all the things that help make us full human beings get pushed aside. And so we lose part of the educational experience. There is something about reading James Baldwin that makes you more human, I do believe. If I don't listen to Pimp a Butterfly and hear what Kendrick is saying, and feel it as a 14-year-old in high school, if I can't access that through school, if I can't allow those sounds, those sights, those spectacles, those feelings to govern how I see the world, and the only way I see the world is through bubbling in A, B, C, or D, and that stuff is important, but if I can't understand the things that make me feel more human, what am I gonna do without 2000 Seasons? What am I gonna do without To Kill a Mockingbird?
Bronx native Columbia professor and science educator Dr. Chris Emden uses a combination of research and innovative teaching practices to change the way students are learning. His program, Science Genius, uses hip-hop as a gateway to connect complex concepts in science through rhyme and metaphor, also known as emceeing.
See, every force has an opposite force, and every action has an equal plus opposite reaction. The sum of all objects at rest is zero unless that object is no longer relaxing. I'm in motion, changing location, till it hits traction, the coefficient of friction. Then it all comes to a full stop, and there goes Newton laws over hip-hop. But hold up, I'm off Newton. I'm on to Einstein. I like Einstein because Einstein's mind is like mine. All right? I'm good? Okay, so y'all, all right. For me to be able to understand and memorize and really like make sense of all the science ideas, there's one thing I had to learn when I was going through college. As I kept getting further and further in science, like I got my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, something really weird started happening. Like the higher I was going in school, the less I would see people who looked like me and were from my hood. By thinking about things through lyrics, I was able to make connections to the ideas. But a lot of folks who come from where we come from don't know that just by being who you are means that you're automatically dope. The community connection has so much significance. And I could look at the kids and see their eyes and say, wait, Columbia professor and he's from my hood? That in itself makes them see that there are possibilities for who they are.
In undergrad, I was taught, to go get the job that would give me money so I can dress nice and get a nice house. So by the time I finished undergrad, I didn't want to come back here. I started off as an urban missionary. And you know where I ended up working? Right down the street. Wow. And I ended up living with 13 people, mostly white. They traveled from around the world, literally, to work in my city for $30 a week, a city that I was trying to run from.
Your communities are not places to run from. Your communities are places for you to bring your gifts back to develop and build so that that cycle of poverty and depravity ends. But somewhere along the line, we stopped doing that. We stopped having those conversations. We told our students, get it and go.
When the young people see the affirming nature of giving back to their community, they want to be a piece of that. Mm-hmm. People thirst for making an impact. Yeah. They just don't know how to do it. It's the seemingly insignificant aspects of your presence in these spaces that trigger something in young people that you can only see when you're in there with them.
Strengthening connections between schools and communities is important. Without this, students will remain underserved. But who's responsible for ensuring those connections have a positive impact?
When we talk about the success or where we want schools to be, we're all culpable. Teachers, administrators, politicians, parents, and the child. The important thing about parents is that they have to feel that they're empowered. They have to understand they do have a voice. Right now, parents in the Black community, you probably have very small participation in PTA meetings because they may not feel empowered. Parents don't have to be super astute on content. They just have to be involved.
In many of our communities, education and those who contribute to the education of young people work in and outside that building.
That's so important, right? I mean, even for someone like myself who's been in school for a long time. But as I reflect on the lessons that are so important to me, right? It's those lessons that I got spending summers in Alabama, right? Sitting in my great-grandmama's house in a one-room shack where she raised 15 children, that those are the lessons that often take us further along the path than do those that we can learn in school systems. Given the challenges students face in schools, neighborhood programs and community-based educators often step in to fill the gaps. I met up with my good friend Kaisha, a former teacher who's working with parents and students through her program, Roots.
It's good to see you.
Likewise. Surprised the world out of me that some of our parents didn't really understand how to break down a report card, or the importance of homework and the importance of reading at home. And I don't know, that was an eye-opening experience that told me that is where to start.
Yeah.
One of the best advice I always got was meet people where they are, not where you want them to be.
Could you talk more about how that comes about and what that looks like for those students? And
Our students and our parents are broken into villages. And I think the premise of Roots is essentially like the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And the powerful thing about the villages, one, it's a powerful place in regards, it allows kids to share their story in a very safe space. And unfortunately, there aren't enough safe spaces or curated spaces just for that. Just to tell me how you feel, just to empty your soul, your heart, whatever is top of mind. And the powerful thing about it is kids are taking care of each other.
Yeah.
So say you share a story of being hurt and having thoughts of committing suicide or whatever it may be, students console each other, they take care of each other.
Right.
And I think that's the world we need to curate a lot more is we step out the way. They have it, they can take care of each other, they can support one another, they know each other's stories, they know each other's experiences. But I think there's powerful things when you want to allow students to heal, 2, create the space for them to heal and support one another, and 3, empower them to own the space.
A cheerleader.
You want to be a cheerleader? Snap it up, snap it up, snap it up.
I wish for money.
You wish for money? What do you want to be?
A fireman.
Fireman, snap it up.
That's fireman. A policeman.
A policeman. Snap it up, snap it up, snap it up.
School is fun. It's not boring. Kids think it's boring. But school gives you education. And I like education so I can go to college.
Throughout this journey, I've confirmed what I've always known to be true. Innovative solutions exist. There are researchers, educators, and organizers around the country attacking the issues from all angles. That said, there are still lingering questions about how legislation and education policy, mostly created outside and away from schools, affects Black students.
1/3 of our education system is funded in this country by property taxes.
If you live in a poor neighborhood, property taxes don't cover the cost of education in the same way as a wealthy neighborhood. It doesn't have to be like that. Taxes could be pooled on a state level. So instead of people in the poor city get the bad school, people in the rich city get the good school, all of it could be pooled together on a state level, and now everybody gets access. Some people are smarter, some people are better. You can give me all the equality I want. I ain't gonna beat LeBron in basketball, right? I mean, if we had the same coaches, same resources, LeBron's still gonna beat my behind in basketball. At least I learned how to dribble. And that's the kind of thing I want. I want equality of opportunity.
There are young people of color who are succeeding and thriving all across the nation. We just have to be willing to invest the time in shifting our frames, in exploring the undercurrents and enablers of their success.
Education is a deeply personal and localized exercise. And so people have to figure out how to take a similar model to work in their context. That it doesn't have to look the exact same, but the real emerges. When Jay said, real, recognize real, and you're looking familiar, I think that people do this work for the sake of authenticity for their communities. That folks in their communities say, yes, this is working. And I think if everyone took that model of working towards authenticity and youth being fully actualized, then we could change the world.
I feel like if we had a world where everybody's lens was shaped by this kind of openness and this recognition of how much capacity we each have as human beings, and rather than a fear of one another and stereotypes of one another and expectations that we can only be this big, the world could be a totally different place.
I have nieces and nephews who are navigating the same spaces that I had to, maybe more violent than what I had to. They're going to confront hard truths. But my hope is that through our work and through the work of a collective of people now, through the challenge of this generation, that we can make the world slightly better for them.
3 things that all people deserve are good love, healthy choices, and second chances. What does that mean in the context of education? Good love means you go to a place where you're valued. You go to a place where you see your history. You go to a place where you see yourself in the textbook. Good love is about saying that we care about you. We will protect you. We will invest in you. We all deserve good love. And on the political level, good love comes in the form of policy. Justice is what love looks like in public. And if you have good love and you have healthy choices, you're still going to make mistakes. But the difference is our kids don't have a margin of error. Even if your kid writes on the wall in high school, doesn't mean they should violate a zero tolerance policy and never be able to go back to public school again. It's not that our kids should be perfect. And it's not that our kids shouldn't be punished or at least disciplined when they do make mistakes. The question is our margin of error smaller than everybody else's? Because rich people make mistakes all the time, and we invest in them. Rich folk go to rehab. We go to jail. We need access to second chances. You shouldn't have to be perfect to be a citizen. Good love, healthy choices, second chances. If we do that, we're gonna be all right.
In spite of a broken system, we are finding ways to survive and even thrive through the loving labor of community educators and organizers, selfless commitment of teachers and school leaders, and groundbreaking research of dedicated scholars. We are working individually and collectively to uncover possible solutions for saving tomorrow, today.